Before the name, the prophetic roots. Long before anyone uttered the word Rastafari, the spirit of it was already rising in the hearts of the oppressed. The early 1900s was a time of pain and confusion, Africa carved up by colonizers, and black people across the Caribbean trapped in systems that told them they were nothing. But from among the broken, a voice of power began to rise, the voice of Marcus Garvey. Garvey was not just a political leader, he was a prophet of awakening. He looked upon the state of his people and declared that they were not slaves or victims. They were children of the Most High, descendants of kings and queens from the motherland. Through his movement, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, he taught pride, unity, and repatriation, the return to Africa both physically and spiritually. But the message that would echo through eternity came as a prophecy. Garvey said, "Look to Africa, when a black king shall be crowned, for the day of deliverance is near." To the colonized ears of the time, those words seemed distant, even impossible. Yet, to the spiritually awake, they were a promise. A signal that redemption would not come from Babylon, but from Zion, the sacred land of the ancestors. In the ghettos of Jamaica, among the humble and forgotten, this prophecy took root like a burning coal of hope. It was whispered among the downtrodden that a king would soon rise, one who would carry the divine light of Jah in flesh. That prophecy became the first heartbeat of Rastafari, a vibration of faith waiting for its moment of manifestation. Garvey's message wasn't about religion. It was about reconnection to the roots, to identity, to the divine spark within every black soul. And that reconnection would soon become a movement that Babylon could not silence. The coronation, the birth of Rastafari, 1930. The prophecy had been spoken. The people were watching and waiting, yearning for a sign from Zion. Then, in the year 1930, the heavens answered. The world turned its eyes to Ethiopia, the one African nation that had never bowed to colonial chains. There, a man named Rastafari was crowned emperor. His new title, Haile Selassie I, meaning power of the Trinity. On November 2nd, 1930, under the blazing African sun, kings, queens, priests, and leaders from across the world gathered to witness the coronation. The drums thundered, the incense rose, and the air trembled with something divine. When the emperor was crowned, he was given the titles King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah. These were not just royal titles. They were the very same words found in the book of Revelation, describing the returning Christ. To the poor in Jamaica who had held Garvey's prophecy close to their hearts, this was no coincidence. They saw it as the fulfillment of divine promise, a living sign that Jah had taken flesh in the image of an African king. To them, Haile Selassie I was not just a man. He was the Almighty incarnate, the restoration of divine power in blackness, a sign that redemption had come for the scattered children of Zion. The name Rastafari, meaning Prince Tafari, became sacred. The people who recognized his divinity began to call themselves Rastafari, in honor of the man who carried the spirit of the Most High. They spoke his name with reverence and chanted praises that would echo through generations. Haile Selassie I, Jah Rastafari, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah. This moment, this coronation, became the official birth of the Rastafari movement. Yet it was more than the beginning of a religion. It was the awakening of a people. The black man, long told he was cursed, now saw himself in the image of God. The psychological chains of slavery began to fall away, replaced by a new vision of dignity, power, and spiritual sovereignty. While Babylon's churches still worshiped the white Christ, the Rastas declared, God is black, and he reigns in Ethiopia. They saw Haile Selassie not only as the ruler of a nation, but as the divine representative of Jah on earth, the true and living King of Zion. So in 1930, a new era began. The spirit of prophecy met the reality of revelation. What Marcus Garvey had foretold became visible truth. Rastafari was born, not in temples or cathedrals, but in the hearts of the humble, the poor, and the spiritually awake. From that day, a flame was lit in Jamaica that would never be put out. The fire of Rastafari consciousness, burning bright in the face of Babylon's darkness. The early movement, roots in Jamaica. When the news of the coronation reached the shores of Jamaica, it did not arrive with royal trumpets or newspaper fanfare. It came as whispers among the poor, spreading like sacred fire through the villages, the hills, and the ghettos. Among the sugarcane fields and the shanty towns, people who had nothing suddenly felt they had everything. A king who looked like them, who ruled from the land of their ancestors, who fulfilled the prophecy that had been carried in their hearts. In those days, Jamaica was still under British rule, a land where the system of Babylon kept black people bound in poverty and shame. The churches told them salvation would come only after death, but the Rastas proclaimed that Jah had already come, in the living flesh of Haile Selassie I, king of Ethiopia. It was a bold declaration, one that defied everything Babylon taught. But the spirit of freedom cannot be silenced. Early teachers and prophets rose to spread this revelation. Leonard Percival Howell, often called the first Rasta, became one of the earliest and most fearless voices. He preached that Haile Selassie I was the Almighty God, that black people must reject the lies of colonialism and embrace their divine identity. Alongside Howell stood other pioneers, Joseph Hibbert, Archibald Dunkley, and Robert Hines, each spreading the message in their own way, guided by the same flame of truth. They gathered followers, held meetings in open fields, and built small communities where people could live free from the chains of Babylon's laws. Howell established Pinnacle, a self-reliant Rastafari community in the hills of St. Catherine. There, people farmed the land, shared food, lived naturally, and praised Jah in unity. Pinnacle became a symbol of what freedom looked like, a piece of Zion rising on Jamaican soil. But Babylon was threatened. The colonial government saw the Rastas as rebels, their dreadlocks as symbols of defiance, their chanting as madness. Police raided Pinnacle, burned homes, and jailed the brethren. Yet the more they were persecuted, the stronger the faith became. Each lock of hair, each Nyabingi drumbeat, each I and I spoken was an act of spiritual rebellion against oppression. The Rastafari message began to grow beyond the hills. It reached the youth in Kingston's ghettos, the farmers, the laborers, the forgotten ones who had long been searching for a truth that belonged to them. In the Rasta livity, they found identity, peace, and purpose. They began to see themselves not as victims of the world, but as chosen children of Jah, living under divine law, not Babylon's rule. By the late 1940s and 1950s, the foundation of the Rastafari movement was solid. Though misunderstood by many, it carried a power that could not be denied, a message of redemption, equality, and unity. The spirit that began with Garvey's prophecy and Selassie's coronation had now taken flesh in the lives of ordinary people. Rastafari was no longer just a belief, it had become a way of life. The fire spreads, from Jamaica to the world. By the 1950s and 1960s, the Rastafari flame that began in the hills of Jamaica could no longer be contained. What started as a whisper of prophecy and a movement of the poor began to rise into a global consciousness. From the Nyabingi gatherings in the bush to the crowded streets of Kingston, the name of Haile Selassie I was being chanted with growing power, Jah Rastafari. In those early days, many still misunderstood the Rastas. To Babylon's system, they were outcasts, rebels with tangled hair, preaching things the world wasn't ready to hear. But what they spoke was not rebellion, it was revelation. They taught oneness with Jah, unity among black people, repatriation to Africa, and the rejection of materialism and oppression. They called Babylon what it was, a system built on lies, greed, and spiritual blindness. And while society scorned them, a new vibration was beginning to echo through the culture, music. The heartbeat of the Nyabingi drums, the sacred rhythm of Africa, began to find its way into Jamaican sound systems. By the time ska evolved into reggae, Rastafari's message had found its voice. The music became the vehicle of the movement, and soon, the words of the prophets would travel farther than any sermon or book could. Then came Robert Nesta Marley, known to the world as Bob Marley, the voice of a generation and the global messenger of Rastafari. Through his songs, the message of love, unity, and liberation spread to every corner of the earth. One Love, Exodus, Redemption Song. These were not just songs. They were psalms of the modern age, carrying the word of Jah beyond Jamaica's shores. Through Marley and other Rasta musicians like Peter Tosh, Burning Spear, and Culture, millions began to learn the sacred name Rastafari. By the 1970s, the movement had reached Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Many began to grow their locks, live tall, and chant praises to Jah. What was once ridiculed had become a global spiritual revolution. The symbols of Rastafari, the dreadlocks, the colors of red, gold, and green, the lion, and the herb, became emblems of freedom and resistance against oppression everywhere. Even the visit of Haile Selassie I to Jamaica in 1966 marked a divine moment in Rasta history. Thousands gathered at the airport in Kingston, chanting, singing, and weeping with joy as their king set foot on the island. The sky filled with the smell of the holy herb, and the people cried out, "Jah live." That day confirmed to the faithful what they already knew, that Rastafari was no myth, but a living truth walking among men. Through persecution, song, and spirit, Rastafari had transcended borders. It was no longer just the faith of a few. It was a movement of global awakening, calling all nations to recognize Jah within themselves. What began with Garvey's voice and Selassie's crown had become a worldwide light, a movement teaching the world to see beyond skin, religion, and nation, and to know the truth of I and I, the divine unity between man and God, the eternal beginning. So, when did Rastafari truly begin? Some say 1930, when Haile Selassie I was crowned. Others trace it to 1916, when Marcus Garvey prophesied the rise of a black king. But the wise know the truth. Rastafari has no beginning and no end. It is not bound by time or place, for it is the eternal spirit of Jah within man, revealed again in this age through the lineage of kings and the cry of the oppressed. Rastafari did not start in Jamaica, nor in Ethiopia. It began in the heart of humanity, in that divine spark that refuses to bow to Babylon. It is the consciousness that remembers. We are more than flesh, more than slaves, more than citizens of a crumbling world. Rastafari is the ancient call to awaken, to see Jah in all things, and to live according to divine order, liberty, harmony, and love. From the prophecy of Garvey to the coronation of Selassie, from the chants of Howell to the songs of Marley, the message remains one: Jah live within I and I. The world may have changed, but the truth still stands unshaken. Rastafari is not a religion with boundaries. It is a revelation of identity, a light that continues to guide those seeking freedom from mental slavery. Even now, in the 21st century, the same Babylon system that the early Rastas spoke against still tries to blind the people with materialism, division, and fear. But the Rasta message still rises like a lion's roar through the storm. Wake up, know who you are, and return to Zion, not just in body, but in spirit. The movement lives wherever truth is spoken, wherever people choose peace over hate and consciousness over corruption. And so, Rastafari continues, not as something that was, but as something that is. It is alive in the dread who chants in the hills, in the youth seeking truth on the streets, and in every soul that opens its eyes to the divinity within. For the spirit of Jah cannot be confined to history. It flows through generations, teaching us that salvation is not waiting in the sky. It's found in the awakening of the heart. Rastafari began the moment you realize Jah lives in you. That moment of awareness, that spark of truth, that's the beginning of all beginnings. So now, I ask you, brethren and sistren, will you live the liberty? Will you walk in the light of Rastafari and free yourself from Babylon's illusion? If this message speaks to your spirit, give thanks, spread the word, and join the movement of consciousness. Subscribe to Zion Way, where truth, unity, and the fire of Rastafari continue to burn bright. For the journey never ends. Jah Rastafari live.